All right, guys, I don't know what happened there, but that was weird. Something went wrong with the computer, but I think we're back now. Good morning. Now, as you can imagine, what we're going to talk about today is going to be difficult to put in words. So please bear with me as we try to push our way through this. We're going to get into some more of the newly released Epstein files. I found lots and lots of documents that no one has covered yet. We're going to cover about 20 of those documents today. And the bombshell at the end will be a tour of underground tunnels in Central Park and the proposed building of 2 playgrounds on top of the tunnel entrance, as Epstein is getting a literal tour of the underground tunnels. We're going to play that at the end. Now, I was able to stomach most of the videos in dataset 10, the infamous dataset 10, and it's worse than you can ever imagine. Essentially, redacted child corn, mostly 13 to 15 years old. Jeffrey seemed to send them into a room by themselves with a toy and a camera. And apparently these videos were used by him for later pleasure or whatever. There were dozens and dozens of those. Now, it was all redacted, of course, but you could see what was going on. He would sit at his desk and put on like a song playlist and sit for hours watching these girls dance naked in front of him. I'm just cutting to the point here because you need to understand the world in which all of this was occurring. Of course, everybody who is friends with Epstein knew this was happening, and nobody reported it. Ghislaine Maxwell is a straight-up liar. Their whole world centered around girls. In fact, there was almost always an underage girl in their proximity on trips and things like this. Everywhere they went, they had these girls with them. Now, you can imagine if you didn't know these people, you would think, oh, that's maybe their granddaughter or their daughter. You wouldn't really think anything of it, right? But the people that were close to Epstein, they absolutely knew what was going on. Now, many times, and I'm describing a lot of this to you because I just can't show you, okay? There's a fine line between, the Bible says something about the abominations of these people are so bad that you can't even really talk about it, right? It says that, I believe, in Ephesians. So therefore, I'm not going to get too specific and I'm not going to show you things, but I'm going to talk to you about some of this. And then I do have documents in the video at the end, which I think is probably okay for YouTube consumption. Sometimes when they were on vacation, the girls were given a camera. They were like the camera person, and then they were recording their outings. And you just get this sense of a very candid and surreal situation. Many of these girls that were redacted that were filming on vacation might have been Virginia Giuffre. We don't know. But there were many other girls above and beyond her that were involved in this circle. So what you have was this life, this bizarre life, pretty much just dancing around the world. Basketball games, horse riding. There's even one scene where there's some guy joyriding in a helicopter above the island, and they're all on the ground filming this person. And you hear one of the people in the background says, oh, well, he's already killed somebody, so here he goes again, or something like that. These people had a bottomless pit of cash. They could go wherever they wanted in the world, and they absolutely did. And all you see is decadence and opulence and extreme riches. I also found a video where Epstein was a true racist. He was comparing the people of St. Thomas, the very people he hired to help run his island. He said they were savages with bones in their noses. And he said he could never trust them with his life in case of an emergency. And he seemed to be concerned about a possible medical emergency and having no hospital nearby to go to, and was joking and laughing about he would never leave his life in the hands of these savages with bones in their noses, that they would try to use the bone to save his life, is what he said. He was a different kind of evil. There's also a few videos of girls being trained to do lap dances. Now, we already knew a lot of this, and so did Trump. So, why did he lighten Ghislaine Maxwell's sentence by giving her better accommodations when everybody knew that she was lying? They already had all these videos. They already knew that she was guilty as sin. Why did they give her better accommodations? That alone should enrage you about Trump's involvement in this. Now, they ate a lot of pizza, hot dogs. We're going to get into that today. We covered the pizza a couple days ago or yesterday. We will cover the hot dogs today. Yes, there were many hot dog references. Apparently, these very wealthy and fit and in shape people lived off of pizza and hot dogs, according to the various emails. And they love to thank each other for the pizza. Now, looking at the videos, you get the feeling that the world was these people's playground. There was no stress about bills or life. It was just warm beaches, warm breezes, exotic adventures, and giggling girls. You almost get the impression that, this is probably what rich people do. But when you see it with your own eyes in this candid environment, it's pretty shocking how much the rest of humanity has to struggle. And these people who figure out the tricks of how to make money out of thin air rule over the rest of us. It's a completely different feel than, for instance, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. I grew up on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And this is even different because these people are being themselves. It's a candid peek into what it's like to control the world. Endless lunches and dinners with diplomats and presidents. This is what they do every day. They just go to lunches and dinners. And the assistants and slaves do all the work for them. They have endless daily activities. And they pretty much just horse around all day. And for a second, you see, all of this. It looks like they're happy in one way, but then you realize what is actually happening. Because you're looking at this and you're going, what the heck? And even the victims look happy. But then you realize the dark side, the manipulation, the love bombing, the control, and of course, the fact that Epstein essentially was robbing the cradle, interrupting countless girls' lives, robbing their innocence, and forever hijacking the normal life that they could have had. Essentially, he was using them like a roll of toilet paper. He had no ambitions of helping these girls in life. He just wanted to use them. Now, what else I took away from this, and we'll get into these documents. I'm just giving you the backdrop as you guys assemble in today. Epstein was a professional liar. He would tell these girls what they wanted to hear to get what he wanted, so he could fuel his endless need for dopamine. Now, there were a couple little gigs. It appears as though he got some of these girls on like a TV show. I think there was an American Idol, a couple other things that he was able to. And this is how the rich do it. This is how they dangle the carrot to find their victims, because everybody wants to be rich and famous, and they have all the power. Now, what else I realized looking through these files, we were lied to about Epstein. He's not some dumb beatnik loser. He's actually a hyper intelligent, to me, it seems like some kind of fallen angel. He is essentially a genius. He has more depth than even Bill Gates, Elon Musk, not that they have much depth. But he did know math, financial math specifically, and it appears as though he was the Einstein of the financial world. Now, the media did not report this as such, but when you look through the Bannon interviews, I uploaded a clip from the Bannon interviews. Remember Steve Bannon interviewed Epstein? Well, all that's in the files. And in hindsight, essentially Bannon, what he was trying to do was to normalize Epstein. They were going to try to whitewash his past, just basically depict him as a controversial figure, but that had already served his, sentences for his crimes. And then at some point, everything backfired. I think way too many victims came out, and then they ditched those Epstein interviews. But in those interviews, you hear him talking. Now, yesterday's video was sped up a little bit, and I probably shouldn't have done that because, of course, the bots come out and say, oh, that's artificial intelligence. No, that's a real interview between Epstein and Steve Bannon. Bannon's asking him, how did you find yourself at the center of the financial world? And Epstein's explaining, and it's believable. What's weird is that Epstein goes into artificial intelligence. He starts talking about it. And he starts talking about how these neural nets are laid on top of one another. And through magic, it seems, they can figure out complex problems, but nobody knows how they're doing it. It's like there's some kind of entity behind the artificial intelligence. He was talking about this in these interviews years and years ago. And now we're supposed to think that all this is unconnected from Donald Trump and Stargate AI and all this AI, where you can look at a video and not even know if it's real or not. We're supposed to believe that these two things aren't connected. There were several videos of Epstein talking about artificial intelligence. It was the main thing that he was consumed with. Now, we're going to get into time travel. That's mentioned in the files. We're going to get into hot dogs and all kinds of other stuff today, you guys. Now, before we go further, okay, because there's a disinformation campaign afoot. Not a lot of people are focused on these files right now, you guys. Look at the news headlines. They act like nobody cares. And there's also victim blaming and trying to discredit the victims. That's happening right now. But let me tell you this before we move on. It is a federal felony. A federal felony to knowingly and willfully file a false police report or make a false statement to the FBI or any other U.S. government agency. The crime is primarily prosecuted under Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Section 1001, often referred to as the False Statements Accountability Act. Penalties are: a conviction for making a false statement or report to a federal agent carries significant penalties, imprisonment up to 5 years in federal prison. The sentence can increase to 8 years if the false statement relates to an act of domestic or international terrorism, human trafficking, or certain sex offenses. So 10 years in prison, with fines up to $250,000, as well as collateral consequences. Felony conviction can result in the loss of certain civil rights, such as the right to vote, own a firearm. So that's just regular felony. Restitution: you may be ordered to reimburse the government for expenses incurred as a result of the false information, such as emergency responses. What this means is that these victims likely were told all of this before they gave their reports. Nobody in their right mind would call an FBI tip line and leave a false report knowing they could go to prison for 10 years if they're lying. And then you factor in the fear factor of what happens when you go up against rich and powerful men. And when you cross-track those two facts, you have to come to terms with the fact that unless somebody is like literally crazy leaving a false report, then you pretty much have to virtually believe every accusation. In my mind, that's how I approach this. This isn't your simple he said, she said local police report. This is the FBI, and these are billionaires. So I think the default should be that we either believe these are real accusations, or that at least some of the victims may have been seeded in by our own government to destabilize the real testimonies. Chaos magic. Now, this is legal under the NDAA Act. It's perfectly legal for them to do something like this. It's called propaganda. They could seed in their own fake reports so that the public doesn't know who to believe. Now, the proof is also in how the testimonies were so easily discarded in the responses. By now, you've heard of the notorious allegations against Trump that was pulled off the site immediately, but we did a show on it, didn't we? As soon as it came out, we covered it, and then they pulled it down. And in the responses, after each of the girls gave their testimony, you would think that if a person makes an accusation like that the FBI doesn't just get to say, oh, they didn't leave a callback number. You guys, they're the FBI. They can trace calls. They can triangulate cell phone towers. They can identify burner phones. You think that they would not try to get a positive identification on every single person that called in? This was the largest PDF file ring in United States history. We're supposed to believe they just dropped the ball. They couldn't. Oh, they didn't leave a name or number. So what do we do? Of course they could find out where that phone number came from. We've all seen the movies. The nature of the claim was so sensational and the people involved so sensational that absolutely the FBI would have followed up to figure out where these calls came from. Why? Because if the claim was false, they would know where to go to prosecute these people, right? If these claims were fabricated. All right, let's get started. Now, this first victim gives a very specific information and was an insider. She mentions Trump in this here, and she says she was close to Netanyahu. She says she reported this to Netanyahu, who she thought was helping her. Now, she doesn't name either of them as perps, but she says that Bibi knew about the case. Let's scan this page. We're not going to read this too much in depth, but I do want you to see get a feeling for this woman's testimony so you can see that she gives verifiable information. I would like to forward this email to District Attorney Audrey Strauss, Acting United States Attorney for Southern District of New York and Attorney General for Victims' Human Rights in the Investigation Division of the Office of the Inspection General Office. I would like to open with a clear statement. I have been going through pain and loss of life and joy of these years, for the corrupting system was used to take the life of innocent children and the disadvantaged. Nothing will be a proper compensation to all the suffering and emotional mental abuse that me and my children were going through all these years. Since 2002 up till now, I have been used sexually as well as my children in different times and episodes that not all is brought to light by a group of powerful, corrupted USA judges, social services, and attorneys. My story has just begun, and I am sure it will get international audience. It's a shame for 15 years, I've been dragging myself and my children in countries and cities in order to save my children from being trafficked by Epstein. The pain is very difficult to carry. And for hearing the news lately, I've decided to take the risk and come forward with my story. I guess I am being brave. I am fortunate to be educated and to be an attorney who set nights and days to carry this life story and the unjust ice of the judicial system in the United States. I would like to report myself as a victim of a grand crime that was done against me. And all this is redacted. And my 3 children. There were assaults, brainwashed, physical and emotional harms, attempts to inflict badly. So this person is not crazy. She goes on and on and on. In December 2019, I saw Ghislaine Maxwell in my building, speeding out after getting out of the elevator. I remember her face because she turned around and gave me and my husband a strong look. It was published that she bought a new house with cash. This is just before she got arrested. After reading in the news, I saw on the internet that the name blank is connected to the heritage of Mr. Epstein, I believe from his father's side. It was strange, all the coincidences around this. Wow. See, a lot of this is redacted that shouldn't be redacted. Because they're, again, protecting billionaires. This family name here, we should be able to hear this and see this. Now this goes on. She does mention Bibi Netanyahu, that he knew about her case. Let's search the page for that. It says here, I believe that in Israel there's a person that has the power, money, and connection to organize this big scam. The Prime Minister Netanyahu is familiar with my case. He was having me and my Israeli father in his house for his boy's birthday celebration in 2001. Sarah Netanyahu knows my ex-husband. So she knew all these people. And nobody helped her. It was a huge cover-up. Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing. This goes on and on and on. But I want to show you that these aren't just random people making random accusations. These were people connected to them. She mentions Trump. I think it says she did some work for Trump. One mention, it says real estate Corcoran Group had my broker license working on project among new development, Trump Tower on 57. So she's got credentials, real estate licenses, facts. This isn't just some empty allegation. Let's get into this next one. Ready for this? Ghislaine Maxwell's nephew emails her, and he responds to a question that she allegedly asked him about who she might get for him to sleep with who's famous. He says, "Hi, Aunt Ghislaine. Hope you're well. I look forward to seeing you. When that might be, however, I'm not sure. I'll email you when I'm able to do something with you. As for my wish list of actresses I'd like to do nasty things to, though not complete, would probably look something like this: Natalie Portman, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Denise Richards." So these are the kind of conversations they were having. And you get the feeling that this couple had immense power, that they could just pick up the phone and call somebody and have them come to their island or get on their plane at the disposal of the nephew. Wow. Now, yesterday we covered the pizza mentions throughout. So many of you asked me to look up hot dogs, right? Because that was in the WikiLeaks. And sure enough, apparently these people had an obsession with hot dogs. Now let me read some of these to you, and this is insane. Health conscious people who work out every day, living off of pizza and hot dogs. Here's an email stream here. Let's see here. talking about bread. Jojo, please give hot dogs to blank tomorrow. They're emailing about hot dogs. Think about it. Why wouldn't you just text somebody this? Do you write an email to order hot dogs? Wow. One last thing I will need brought from New York City. In the white freezer downstairs kitchen of 71st Street, there are packages of frozen hot dogs. Jeffrey Epstein would like to have hot dogs for lunch tomorrow, and these are the new dogs he likes. Just weird. Here's a couple more about hot dogs. This is to Epstein. He says, whoever sends this says, your hot dogs from Brooklyn is here. If you would like. An email. Here's another one. From a redacted person to somebody else. I'll get the snacks for 2 p.m. Mr. Epstein wants hot dogs. Here's another one. To Epstein. This was in 2015. Jojo will bring for you hot dogs. What time do you need me tomorrow? Here's another one. 2016. I guess no hot dogs at the deli for their Super Bowl party. Probably not. Hoping you can get hot dog and check out some of the game. I think Jeffrey would care less about the game. So this might have been, remember, the Super Bowl is notorious for trafficking. So Jeffrey Epstein doesn't care about the game because he's got the hot dogs. This was in 2016. I don't know who was at the Super Bowl or where that took place, but that was what was going on there. Now this email involves, was this the one with, Noam Chomsky? They're emailing back and forth. Talking about Jewish delis and stuff. All right. Now, Epstein was even in contact with Macron. Here he forwards a secret message from Macron to a person named Bergie Brendy. As you can see the spelling here, your eyes only. And he says, from Macron. We believe that we need to rethink, rebuild, and invent governance and the format of international institutions, commitments, and relationships between public and private stakeholders and socioeconomic instruments to better address these challenges. With socioeconomic innovations, would you support to promote more progressist future? So he had Macron's ear as well. Next, we're about halfway through these. In 2018, Epstein describes a world order where Macron and Merkel obey an unseen silent master, which he calls the bloc. And he talks about how they're torn between, basically controlling the masses, giving the illusion that they're doing something about the problems, but really their allegiance is to the bloc. He says here, still it is too early for Mr. Bannon and his allies to celebrate, or for the champions of the Union to panic. The allure of populists can fade rapidly if they fail to come up with concrete solutions to the resentments that brought them to power. The task for Mr. Macron and Miss Merkel and their allies is to stay the course on the bloc's values, coherence, and rules, but also to recognize and address the anger that has fed the rebellion. So, your opinion doesn't matter. It's whatever the bloc is. Now, Epstein was even in contact with Ariane Rothschild. Now, I think, if I remember correctly, Macron is related to the Rothschilds. Is this true? Do you guys know this? But here, Epstein sends this email to Ariane Rothschild and explains how Macron is useful because he will help usher in the digital currency. Ariane says, hold on, let's back up here. Epstein says, I can't figure out anything that they are doing. How can Parsons tell you, I'll call you later this week and then later next week and still nothing? And these are 15 numbers? She then says, agree. Worrying people. I have lunch tomorrow with Macron. Should be interesting. Ariane Rothschild. Epstein says, he is pretty savvy on digital money. The argument to be made is trust in crowds. Is the new institution, not trust in old institutions. Cheap transfers. Central banks playing a more significant role. Wow. Then you hear Epstein in this next file talking about how Israel needs the United States. He calls the United States daddy. And he also mentions in here that the U.S. now has leverage on Bibi Netanyahu. He says, D.C. believes it now has leverage on Bibi. So this guy was in the middle of all this. This was in 2011. Wow. Epstein says, Bibi, Abbas, all the children, out of fear, have been forced to turn to daddy for advice. U.S. in strong position. The army, Egypt, Jordan in control, and will do what is necessary to stay there. Now, is he all the children? Is he talking about Palestine, the Palestinians? It sounds like maybe he is in this instance. Now, here is an internal FBI memo. All right, an email, and it's titled "Names in the Epstein Files." This is from last year, you guys. Names in the Epstein Files. So they did have names in the Epstein Files as of July 2025. And look at who's number one on the list. Donald Trump. One identified victim claimed abuse by Trump, but ultimately refused to cooperate. Well, probably was in fear. And of course, Prince Andrew, Jess Staley, Leon Black, Glenn Dubin, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Clinton, Alan Dershowitz, Copperfield, Les Wexner, John Luke Burnell, Naomi Campbell, Chris Tucker, Larry Summers, Kevin Spacey, Didier, Bill Gates, and then no hits on these three. So the FBI was talking about this. We are being lied to all the way through. Now here's another victim testimony interview. She names Naomi Campbell, Heidi Klum. Remember we did all those Got Milk decodes on Heidi Klum? Because she actually posed for Got Milk twice and no one else did. And we told you Klum is milk backwards. Mulk. Molek. Bill Clinton's mentioned in here. Al Gore. Matt Groening from The Simpsons. Jack Cousteau's granddaughter. And later in here, she describes a bed on Epstein's jet, the Lillian Express, where, of course, orgies took place. And she says there were always underage girls on the flights. Always. And basically, this victim was giving sexual massages. She describes that earlier in this testimony. But she's afraid to name the people that she gave these massages to. She's afraid to name them because she says they're so rich and powerful. Let's take a look at this. Can you give me an estimate as a number of friends for whom Jeffrey Epstein paid for your services? There was about, 8 guys possibly. And then he says, are you able to name those people for me? She says, no, not at this stage. I just Some of these people are really influential in power, and I don't want to start another S storm with a few of them. I'll tell you that there were some erotic massages given to, I'm just afraid to say it to you. He says, okay. Now, as an interviewer, someone comes to you and tells you that there are rich and powerful people that have possibly committed a crime. Aren't you going to press that person? Aren't you going to reassure the person that they're going to be completely protected, but that you need the names of these people and you have the power to protect this person from these people? But instead, the interviewer seems to feed into the fear by picking and choosing what he's going to get information for and probing on other things. Cover up, right? Oh, okay, you're not going to tell us? That's fine. Let's move on to some other things. Like, no, let's get down to the bottom of this. He should be reassuring her that she will be protected. So this is what these people were dealing with. It was a game. It was a chess game. It's like, okay, what do you know? They tell people what they know, and all of a sudden they start getting targeted and pressured, right? Nothing's done with the investigation. Their life gets worse. And then they just give up. They're like, uh-oh, maybe I should just shut up. This is why it's so important to try to believe these people. Now, let's keep going here. We got a few more. Here's one where Epstein forwards an invite to Naomi Campbell for an event in Moscow. Remember we talked about that? Because Epstein had landed in Greenland. I mean, is that even legal? Like, who gets to land in Greenland? And where did he land in Greenland? Did he land in Nuuk in the capital? Did he land in Tool Air Force Base? Let's look it up. Do flights connect in Greenland? Because no one's really flying over the Arctic, are they? Oh, I guess they do. Domestic travel between Nuuk and the smaller settlements? Okay, well, international connection. Okay, so United does fly there. Okay, all right. I had no idea you could fly to Greenland. So, to me, that's weird. But that's where Epstein was flying to on occasion in the files. Now, this is weird, though, because you get the impression here that these models were essentially for sale, almost. Like they were high-class escorts. There were several emails between Epstein and Naomi Campbell where she was like, hey, where are you? I'm coming to New York. You got the feeling that they were selling their bodies to the rich, to the highest bidder or whatever. Now, I did search the name Satan. Somebody asked me to do that. It did come up a couple times. And I found these cryptic emails. This one, it's a joke. To Epstein from Warren Einstein. Stay behind me, Satan, but don't push me. Wow. So the inference here is that they're working with Satan. Wow. And then here's another one about time travel. This is just a weird cryptic blank email from Martin Nowak to Epstein. And it just says time travel. And there's a PDF file attached to it, but you can't see that. So I don't know what that is. And then there's this one to actually Epstein's carbon copied on it. It says, Seth, we should explore the biological consequences of time travel. It would be amusing to calculate the rate of evolution of a population or a mutant that can travel in time. Whoa. Mutants live among us. Now, I have a surprise one. And I didn't want to put it in the title because this is a bombshell, you guys. Larry Wasaki. This is Epstein's pilot. And he sends an email to Epstein asking him for a vacation from flying. And guess where his daughter was stationed with top security clearance? This is Epstein's pilot's daughter. She's Army top secret military clearance at Fort Huachuca. That place has been coming up quite a bit. The deep state has taken over. Now, what are the odds that Epstein's pilot has a daughter who is top military secret clearance? It suggests that maybe Larry also has top secret clearance. In other words, his pilot was a deep state asset. Flying things around. Flying secret cargo around. Sound familiar? It should, because it's all about trafficking. And Fort Huachuca has been linked to the Romanian trafficking, if you've been following some of these channels that have been covering it. Wow. Now, let me check in with you guys, and we'll watch this video. Hopefully, we don't get thrown off of here. We're going to watch this video of a young girl, and it's hard to identify who it is, videotaping Epstein, and they go into an underground tunnel in Central Park, and then they come out of the tunnel, and they say, oh, there'll be a children's playground right there, and then older children, there'll be another playground right there. The inference that I get is that they're planning on how to snatch children underground. Let's take a look at this, you guys. This is insane.
See that we could do different things with. That's a northern pump house, but they're much smaller than this. This is the Klein one.
Okay. You could be all connected or whatnot.
Somehow, I don't know what could happen. That would have to be.
They can be all connected somehow. They're looking at the water source in this pond in Central Park. Watch what happens next.
Okay.
Hold on.
Here they go. They're going underground.
Great.
No. Last time we heard the steps were pretty.
About halfway. Put a little space between you as you go down on the steps. Don't everyone get on the steps at once.
Yeah, you can't really see anything. I have a night shot on here, infrared, so it's actually picking up.
There you go. That's nice and cool.
Oh, did it come down here? So cool. Just get this part. amazing.
So in the scheme of things, Chris, you could actually move all the stuff, right?
I suspect uptown is what they did, yeah.
Then, yeah, removed all this thing.
Uh-huh.
Did you hear that? She said conceivably they could move all those things for this underground tunnel.
But I mean, all this masonry is really vintage of the 1860s. It's really quite...
Now, I believe that was Ghislaine Maxwell speaking in the background, and we don't know who the girl is.
Actually, perhaps that might be the vent that goes out of top.
You get the impression that this is some kind of like a real estate tour, like they're going to buy this.
Oh, that's
That's the transverse road in here? Right. Now, where the reservoir, where the Great Lawn is, there was a reservoir originally there that predated the park, built in the 1840s. It became obsolete in the 1930s. There is a definite connection between, Central Park and the fact that the water supply system is so integral to it.
That's great.
That's for sure.
Yeah, it's great.
And this pump house similar to this.
Pretty cool.
They then emerge up onto the street level and listen to what they say next.
Puppeteer space for a while, but by the 70s it was used as basically staff facilities. So what our program is, we're actually...
Because you could sort of have this already planned out for something, so then what part is available to do something with?
We actually don't have any funding for this.
Oh, okay.
What part is available to do something with?
So that's, okay. So you just need funding for what you already have in mind to do?
Yes.
Okay.
And in a sense, there is basically a top lot geared towards smaller kids.
Mm-hmm.
The large piece out front, adjacent to Umpire Rock, would be for older kids and is also basically a giant water feature.
Younger kids and older kids next to these tunnels that they were going to purchase.
Right at the high point, water actually runs down there. This area out in front will be a large open area with a synthetic turf play surface. And then there'll be swings and kind of
synthetic toy surface, play surface, and swings.
An old-fashioned playground off to the south. And it was how
So, what was up with that? Weird, right? Now, I had intentionally pivoted away from Trump over the past few days and looking at these Epstein files because I wanted to give this fair balance. But tomorrow will be gloves off. I'm going to go through the files with a fine-tooth comb. I'm going to give it the inner stars treatment as it pertains to Trump to see if there's any connections other than that first page that they pulled down of the allegations against him. Also, keep in mind that we are still waiting on the 302 files. They're called the 302 files, which are basically the actual interviews where thousands of victims named the millionaires and billionaires. We still don't have the 302 files. They were not released in the Epstein files. So that is where the names are. Okay, for some reason, they don't want us to see those. Probably because Trump's listed in the names as well. So I'm back in the chat, you guys. I don't know why all the YouTube channels aren't covering this stuff. This is unbelievable. Everybody should be on this. We should all be going through these files. So I don't know what we're all waiting for, but I'm going to keep on it. So, all right, you guys, I'm in the chat. Let me put this on live chat. We can have a short discussion about this. Now, only about 2,000 of you saw yesterday's video of literally Epstein talking about artificial intelligence. I hadn't seen anyone else post that. So for some reason, YouTube's not sending out the notifications. It was only a 1.5-minute video. So please watch that video from yesterday in his own words, talking about artificial intelligence. And that was the Steve Bannon interviews. Yep. There should be outrage about this. Hundreds of politicians, Hollywood celebrities would be in prison if the DOJ would arrest the perps. Exactly. They're just covering it up. And I think the average layperson just doesn't have enough information. They just don't want to look at this stuff. You guys, some of the stuff I had to endure yesterday to get through some of these videos, it was sickening. I just wanted to vomit. I mean, we're talking dozens and dozens and dozens of videos of young girls that Epstein was just running through. It's heartbreaking. And for the American people not to care and to actually believe that Epstein was the only one doing this, just him and Klein, that's it, and they paid the cost and that nobody else was involved, it just makes me lose faith in the American public. Okay, let's say they think, oh, Trump did absolutely nothing. Okay, if you believe Trump absolutely did nothing, what about the other millionaires and billionaires? Aren't you going to demand that the Department of Justice starts arresting some people? Well, you just don't care? Just because Trump's not involved, you just don't care? And I truly believe he was involved. I think they either scrubbed most of the stuff. Well, we're going to go through it. I'm going to go through it today. I'm going to work on this today. But you can imagine the things that Epstein was telling these girls. Because you think to yourself, well, where were the parents? Well, Epstein was running dance schools, it appears. A lot of these were family members, young girls within the family. And he was telling them all kinds of things. There was some tennis matches going on. He could have posed as a talent scout and, hey, I need your daughter to come and stay with me on the island. We're going to make her famous, or we're going to give her a modeling contract. And then the parents sign over. They probably back then in the 90s and the early 2000s, they probably had no idea. Yeah, Bill Gates is next after Trump. He's mentioned thousands and thousands of times, but it's so hard to parse through all of the little data, like you almost have better luck searching random words, to find little nuggets of truth versus a famous person's name. Because when you search the name, you get thousands and thousands and thousands of documents, and it will literally take weeks to go through all of it. So you almost need, and it's almost as if they made the search feature on the site intentionally broad, so you couldn't ever find anything in the files. So, yeah, it's like there's no outrage. We need a complete overhaul of our political system. Heck, step 1. You ready for this? If you have made over $1 million in a year, you are disqualified for being president of the United States. Sorry, we're done. We are done. Amend the Constitution. You're not allowed to be a multimillionaire and be president. Bingo. Done. Boom. You're not allowed to be an actor, a famous actor, and be president. It's over. We want the local plumber. We want someone who started a business from the ground up, who actually pays taxes. We want local people. You know, it's funny in the Epstein files, when he's being interviewed by Bannon, he mentions how the power structure in the world works. He talks about monarchies. Then he gets to the United States, and he's like, in the United States, our presidents are actors. He literally said that, and it's actually true. He was not a stupid man. He was just a creep and a pervert. So, yes, outlaw lobbying. That should be at the top of the list. Heck, I don't even think they should have fundraising. Because you start giving people money, and all of a sudden now they got to do favors for people. So I don't know. We'd all have to vote on how to fix the system. But the system we have now does not work. Heck, at this point, the definition of a politician is someone who can be blackmailed, right? That's pretty much where we're at. You don't get through the glass ceiling unless they can blackmail you. And they probably show you up front, hey, if you don't listen to what we say, we got this tape and that tape, and your whole life will be ruined. Yep, we get the government we deserve. I agree, Sheldon. This is why it's so important to wake people up. Yep, stuck in the left-right paradigm. Yes, they are. So let me get your thoughts on that. What did you guys think about that last video in the tunnel? And then them cutting right to talking about 2 children's playgrounds next to the tunnel. Did you get the creeps with that? And did you get the creeps about Ghislaine Maxwell in the background asking if they could clear out some of that stuff down in the tunnel? I mean, that was weird. And how they connect together. All right. I mean, do you think that's the vibe I got? I don't know. Maybe it was just in the big nothing sandwich. Oh, the videos are in data set 10, but they're kind of hard to get to. Like when you go to data set 10, you can't, all it says is MP4 file. So I had to download what's called a BitTorrent, I guess. This was all new to me. I didn't know how to do any of this. And then it downloads it. So now I'm a little bit concerned because you guys, some of this stuff is child porn. Now it's redacted, but that's what it is. I mean, I guess because it's from the DOJ website, I mean, they can't really, go after someone for that. But we're just trying to get down to the bottom of the truth. So, the conversation coming out of the tunnels were about children. Yeah, that's what I thought too. It was all about the children. Why did he mention 2 different playgrounds and the artificial surface meeting up with the entrance to the tunnels? That was weird. Now, many of you that live near Central Park might know about that exact building and that pond and everything. Because people that live in New York know these places. They might have even seen all this. Maybe the playground's already been built. Because that video was taken in the 90s. Or maybe late 90s or early 2000s, maybe. That's what it looked like. Gosh, I can't speak this morning. Wow. It looked old. And now here's something else. And this is how I know that a lot of stuff has been scrubbed. I've made it through most of the videos in dataset 10. Now, there are other datasets with more videos. But I went straight to dataset 10 because I researched this online, and the chatter was dataset 10 was the worst. And it absolutely was the worst, you guys. It was the worst. Very, very hard to get through. And I had to skip through a lot of it because it's just stuff that you shouldn't see. But wait, where were we going with that? What was the question? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah. Oh, that's what I was going to say. So, you guys, all of the videos, except for like maybe, I want to say 10 or 20 out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, so far, those videos are all relatively new looking. There aren't a lot of old video footage of inside of Epstein's house. I mean, there's some, but not the amount that you would think there would be, like from the 90s and the 2000s, right? So, hello, the 90s and the 2000s was when Trump was running with Epstein. So we don't see a lot of that. So it begs the question, where are all these old VHS videos? We know that Trump hung out with Epstein. You're going to tell us there are no videos of Trump hanging out with Epstein? That's unbelievable, actually. And I'm not saying videos of Trump doing anything wrong, but there should be videos of Trump and Epstein, right? Even if they're not doing anything wrong in the video. Where's all that? So that right there says there's a cover-up. They were best friends in the 80s and 90s. Where are the videos? You see the problem here? That's the dead giveaway that there's been a cover-up. There should be dozens and dozens of videos with Trump hanging out with Epstein in Manhattan, in his Manhattan apartment, and other places. I mean, unless Trump expressly said, no videotaping, which I can't imagine. You know, yeah, in hindsight, you could say that, but when you're going through it, they probably never thought they'd get caught. So they were videotaping each other all the time. So I can't imagine Trump had the foresight to say, don't ever videotape me unless he's a time traveler. Right? Which we suspected could have been the case. Biff's almanac. Maybe he knew Epstein was going to go down and he kept his hands clean. I don't know. But I can tell you this. There should be at least a handful of videos with Epstein and Trump, even if he wasn't doing anything wrong in those videos. And nothing like that has surfaced. So, some left independent channels are looking at some of this, says Charlotte. Many people notice there's not a lot on Hillary. There's not a lot, even on Bill Clinton. There's not a lot in there other than what they already showed us with him in the jacuzzi and girl sitting in his lap. And I'll take a look at them too at a certain point. But what a trip. Yeah, women have already testified about Trump. This is no secret. We're just not getting the story of what the allegations were because it's all been sealed. All right. Well, let me get on these files, you guys. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I know this is difficult to get through, and I hope I did the information justice. And we will get down to the bottom of this. I know there's more bombshells to come. But I love each and every one of you, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care, you guys.